Hello and welcome to today's videos. We're going to cover Gen G and T1 many hours after the fact of getting this video done for the day. T1 win 3-1. They're going to World's Finals against BLG. I had Gen G winning this 3-2, but T1 ended up coming through. Once again, third year in a row that they are going to finals. In my opinion, the best roster to ever um, be, be in LOL esports. I mean, very seldom do you see a roster stick together for 3 years and have as much success as they've had, internationally especially. I've hard pressed to find a roster that showed as much success across multiple metas to show a well-rounded ability as each player, on that team showed. Hey, I can play this meta and that meta. I mean, sure, we have some teams that may do very well for 1 year, but then the team falls apart or this, that, or the third. And in part, I believe a roster also needs to be able to stick together and be able to play together and not, want to leave, if you will. Otherwise, I mean, maybe, those guys weren't as in sync as we'd like to think they are. But regardless, more about today's series as T1 win 3-1. In terms of control, they were in control for about 60% of the minutes in this one when you're taking gold and objectives. Guma, 19, 4, and 20, 33% of damage. He played Ashe, Caitlyn, Ashe, and Varus. Owner, 11, 6, 23, had the best KDA, going Vi, Kindred, Vi, Skarner. And then Pays, 11, 3, and 16, with 30% of the damage for Gen G. Ziggs, Kaisa, Ezreal, and Ashe. So, Pays doing his job at a high level. In my opinion, this was Lehens, and then to a lesser degree, Chovy and Canyon, who left a lot on the table in this one, but mostly Lehens, dying 20 times across 4 games, really struggling in their losses. Gen G won game 2 in what I would consider to be a 100-0 control situation. Like, they were ahead from the rip and never gave up the gold lead and always were ahead even when you took into account for objectives. Game 4 was close. In Game 3, how Gen G opened up the game with a level 1, got ahead on Zeus, Pays getting gold, but couldn't do anything with it as the Gragas was too strong. But Game 4, Gen G were actually in a gold lead, but still behind if you take into account the stats that Hextech Drakes gave T1 in the mid game, but they almost threw Game 4. Gen G actually were ahead slightly, and once the game stabilized, in a very short amount of time, T1 were able to win that one and end the series. But in general, I feel like this had a lot to do with just Lehens inting. Puzzling decisions by the team. There was, I think in game 1 is when Baron was taken by T1. They rushed it as Canyon was taking Drake, and you're like, okay, well, why aren't we on the same page here? Why are we not ready and prepared for this as T1 do what they've been doing time and time again over the last couple of years of just kind of forcing Baron and, hey, come meet us at Baron pretty much, and the other team for some reason just isn't ready for it. The Gragas pick was strong. I mean, hell, they played Maokai top and lost in game 2, but evidently they were scrimming Weibo to have that pick also at their disposal. In terms of, I mean, I feel bad for Pace because he played pretty well. Hell, he had less deaths than Guma. Guma's the KDA king, right? But Pace is still doing his job at a high level. His DPM was just under Guma and Faker in this one. And Chovy, I mean, okay, let's just go back to Canyon for a minute. In terms of Canyon, the Skarner pick in games 1 and 2, Skarner is just not like I said it last series when Gen G were playing, that, hey, against Fly, you got to give Canyon the ball. He's the one that's performed in moments like this, unlike anyone else on their team. At Worlds, he's won. And he's better on carries than he is on facilitators. He's still one of the greatest to ever play the role. In my opinion, he is the jungle GOAT. But the fact of the matter is, he needed to be placed on carries for this one and to carry the team. He could not facilitate enough to give them a win in this one. And even though the Skarner pick was very strong for others like Shun and even Owner winning on it, and Canyon did win on it in this tournament and in playoffs, so the notion that he couldn't win on it, I think, is blown out of proportion. But Chovy was not dealing the damage necessary with the gold that he probably was receiving. We really think about Chovy and how much he was ahead of Faker, I believe. Was it game 3 or game 4? I think it was game 4 where Chovy was Maybe he was on RA in Game 4 and Tristana Game 3. Regardless, he was ahead quite a bit of gold over Faker, as Faker was given gold to Zeus, but Chovy did not do anything with that gold. And in the end, that's kind of been the Chovy MO, right? He gets high resources, but not dealing as much damage as you would like. He still is one of the best players in the world. Wins and losses don't necessarily play a role in if you are the best player in the world. Um, in my opinion, I think a win-loss is our team stat more so than a player stat. But didn't show up today, and that's to his detriment as he continues to get the titles that he receives. That, in my opinion, this was more Lehenz's fault than him, but I guess there's a notion that he should have 1v9'd this series, that the best player in the world would. And I would like just to know who is 1v9ing when their support's dying 5 times a game, um, like Lehenz was. And you could say, well, Knight did it with On. I don't know how many times On died yesterday across the Weibo series in 3 games. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe On did die 15 times. But it's just like one of those things of like, hey, I mean, he can only do so much with what he's given in this one. And we talked about the HLE series when Chovy struggled, carrying that team with players that are no longer even in Tier 1 regions or even in Worlds qualifying leagues, right? Willer is technically in CK, right? So that's a thing as well. But more in particular, this series, interesting picks out of T1. Draft-wise, Gen G struggling. T1 are capable of once again doing things that others aren't. They're prepared for the Yone. They know how to play into it and ban it when necessary, and they just know how to handle the Silas and things like that as well. And you think about last year with I think it was Azir Oriana last year, not 2022, where Faker's the only one that can play this into this. So I guess they're the team that's doing things that others can't, and that's how you win. If you're different than others and they can't really prepare for you as easily. What else are we thinking about here? The Pike out of Keria is fun. Game 2, the Braum alongside Caitlyn, not a good look. We don't like Caitlyn Braum here. But the Pike is fun. There's a Keria pick that who knows, maybe he gets a skin, maybe he doesn't. Depends how next week goes. But, this team is coming into BLG and, we cherry pick stats here or there like, that T1 hasn't beaten BLG in a best of 5 this year. True. T1 did beat BLG in a best of 1 in this tournament on this patch, but not the same 5 players. So that is a thing. But also we probably should acknowledge that T1 also didn't beat Gen G for the last 18 months in a best of 5 and beat them today. So maybe T1 are playing better than they did the last 18 months. I mean, who knows? We could also say T1 beat BLG when they had Wei, and that was not who's playing. So, you'd assume this upcoming final. So, I think fandoms here or there are going to, pick which one stats to look at and things like that. So, this entire week we're going to go by each role and kind of look at, these players and how they match up historically against each other and also this year, and how they're faring in this tournament and kind of, make a picture that is more complete with a larger sample size and taking into account more factors. But so that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, become a YouTube supporter, and hope to see you again tomorrow.